So I'm making a kind of custom fit shifter mount for this rear stand for my GT Omega Classic wheel stand slash rear seat frame setup. So basically the one that's on the side of the wheel stand, which I'll show you, makes it so that the Fanatic shifter is really high up. So this is where the stand or the shifter mount is on the side of the stand. If you mount the Fanatic shifter, well, now the shifter knob is like way up high, almost higher than the steering wheel, not very realistic, and I wanted it a little bit further back. So I was trying to figure out how to do it, and with the classic wheel stand, you get two shifter mounts. You get the one that goes on the side of the stand, and then one that goes into these, I don't know where these pipes are, so that if you don't have a rear seat frame, you can use that. So that was just sitting there not being used, and I thought, oh, I wonder if I can make it work for this rear seat frame, because I can't use it once the rear seat frame is installed. So what I did was I took that assembly and I ended up doing some heavy modifications. So basically, this was much taller. So this kind of L shape came up much higher, about this high. So I cut that off and put the cap on there. And that piece that I cut off, I used as a spacer so that I could bolt this L frame or L piece right to the seat frame itself. But I needed a spacer in here because otherwise the shifter or this part of the pipe would be digging into the car seat itself. So I needed to space it outwards. So by basically, you can kind of see I've got the bolts. So the large holes there, so I could put the bolts all the way through, and then they bolt on the other side like that. So it's a bit of, messing around to get that all fitted, but once it's on there, it's nice and solid. It doesn't flex forward or backwards. But the one problem is that although it's not flexing forward or backwards, side to side, so tilting side to side, it was shifting or is flexing quite a bit. So I made this side bracket or this extra bracket out of steel. You can see it's kind of bolted on there. And I made that go all the way across to the frame just to give it more strength so it's not flexing side to side. Now, this L shape piece was no longer flexing side to side or forward and backwards. So it's mounted on there, it's not going anywhere. But once I installed the shifter, it's only attached on this bar or pipe with these two small bolts. And this whole platform was flexing. Okay, so even though the L-shaped piece was fairly solid, this whole platform was flexing a bunch side to side like so. So the third thing that I did was take a piece of ready rod and I basically drilled a hole here and made it fairly large. And one of the holes that was already there for the bolts, for this like plate, basically hole like that, I drilled it out larger so that I could put this piece of ready rod at an angle all the way down. And I put two nuts, so I put two nuts on it so you can see it like that. So it's just sandwiched in there. And same thing with the bottom. Okay, so you can see it down there. So it's sandwiched. And with that, it gives it that rigidity. So it does have the tiniest bit of flex. Like you can barely see it there. But there's nothing I could do to make it any more rigid than it already is. So basically by utilizing what I had, I was able to mount it on the side of the seat frame. I was able to make a bracket to give it more rigidity, and then use some ready rod I had to go across to give it even more rigidity. So now I'm going to mount the shifter. Okay, so I gotta mount the shifter on it like so. And then I'm going to also mount the handbrake on the side of the shifter. And then we'll see how it looks. All right, got the shifter and the handbrake mounted. So shifter I have kind of over as far as possible, so it's right next to the seat like so. Handbrake mounted, and I flip the handle around. And because of the position it's in, it's easy to still get to the slider switch to move this thing from H pattern to sequential. But yeah, so still has some flex, as you can see. But I'll sit down. That way you can kind of see how much flex there is. So it might be kind of hard to see, but there still is a little bit of wiggle, but it's pretty good for me. So there's not much else I could do to get this any stiffer than it already is. But I think that considering this cost me nothing to kind of fabricate up, just some time, I think it's actually turned out pretty good. So yeah, so there is a way to make a good shifter mount for that GT Omega Classic wheel stand. And hopefully if you have those same wheel stand or something similar, maybe you can do something like this.